We have no choice. We have to respond. It's not the loss this past Sunday that defines you as a football team. It's how you respond to a loss.
The Broncos look to bounce back from their first loss of the season as they head to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers, and we are getting you ready for kickoff. Hello, I'm Phil Milani alongside Sidney Jones and Eric DILALLA. Guys, let's talk about the offense first here. Last week, it didn't matter who was at quarterback, really struggled to move the ball. Sidney, how can they help put whoever starts this week in a more successful situation?
Well, Phil, I think first and foremost is we need to get the run game going. Doing that will open up the play action, which will get the passing game going as well, obviously. I mean, the Broncos, they only ran the ball 17 times on Sunday, which they've averaged over 30 rushing attempts the first 3 games. And even head coach Vic Fangio, he said that the offense didn't really play as well as he'd hoped. They weren't that effective. So I think all around in every aspect, run game, pass game, everyone needs to step up and make bigger explosive plays.
Yeah, we saw Javonte Williams have that massive run, but that was really the biggest highlight on the offensive side of the ball. Erica, how about the offensive line too? Because 5 sacks for the Ravens coming into that game, 5 sacks just last Sunday alone.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. The offensive line has to play better. It's not just about those guards, though. Bobby Massey, Garrett Bowles, they allowed their fair share of pressure. They've got to play better as well. But the run game in particular, I think, can help take some of that pressure off of them. Sidney mentioned the overall rushing attempts, but what sticks out to me is only 4 in the second half when you're still in a 2-possession game. I think they could have stuck with it a little bit longer. Hopefully you do the same this weekend. Listen, this isn't going to be easy going against a Pittsburgh defense that has TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Devin Bush. You're going to have to kind of stay with it, realize this might be somewhat of a low-scoring game. And then in the passing game, Phil, I'd like to see a few more passes in the middle of the field. We saw Tim Patrick kind of succeed on some of those comeback routes. Teddy Bridgewater wasn't quite hitting on the sidelines. Drew Lock wasn't hitting on those deep passes. If you can hit on some of those intermediate routes, that's going to help move the chains.
Yeah, and just stay ahead of it. Make it third down and manageable. Quick passes to try and give the quarterback a little bit of breathing room there, because it could be a long day with TJ Watt and company on the other side. Here's what Pat Shurmur had to say earlier this week.
We missed on some big passes early, right? And so then you run to try to keep on schedule, and then we had some long third down situations. And typically, if you're staying on the field and converting third downs, you get more runs. I mean, that just goes without saying, and you feel more comfortable doing it. We've been a team that's been able to drive the ball, which means when you're running the ball, you're making yards. And it didn't go our way the other night. I got to be better. We got to be better. We just got to play better than we did against Baltimore.
On the other side of the ball, that Broncos defense didn't look like the Broncos defense we saw the first 3 weeks of the season last week. Lamar Jackson, 316 yards passing, only 23 points given up, but it just didn't feel like the defense we were used to seeing. Can they rebound this week?
Phil, I think absolutely. I mean, the Steelers, they're only averaging about 16.8 points per game. They're last in the league in rushing yards per game with just over 55. I mean, I think if this Broncos defense can contain the run, which we know they can, we saw them limit Lamar Jackson to just 28 yards. Rushing yards last weekend, I think they'll be just fine. And another thing that I think they should really focus on this week is just creating more takeaways. We didn't see any last weekend against the Ravens, but they did go back-to-back games recording 2 interceptions, obviously versus the Jaguars and the Jets. So if they do those 2 things, they'll rebound nicely.
Some turnovers would be nice just to help the offensive side of the ball out too, create maybe a momentum-changing type of play. You mentioned it, Sidney. Last week they went against the top rushing offense in the NFL. This week they're going against the worst rushing offense in the NFL. Eric, that's got to help.
Well, I would think so. I mean, but Najee Harris is difficult in both the run game and the passing game. Ben Roethlisberger looks to him all the time, and I would be a little bit cautious because one, you've got to focus on Najee Harris, make sure you can take him down. But there's this notion out there, and it's backed up by statistics, that Ben Roethlisberger has not averaged very many yards per attempt. He's throwing short of the sticks.
Dink and dunk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think, Phil, there may be a tendency. Maybe you want to come up and pressure him, play some press coverage. I would still be a little cautious of Roethlisberger's ability to throw deep. We saw him hit Deontay Johnson last week for a deep touchdown pass. With all that said, though, Phil, he does hold the ball. So you talk about takeaways. Green Bay had a strip sack last week. Maybe Vaughn can get on the board for the first time since the middle of 2018 with a forced fumble.
I can't believe it's been that long, huh? Yeah, well, Von Miller, I know he's got to be excited going against Big Ben. There's so many battles, over the years. Here's what Von had to say on Thursday.
I see the same old Big Ben, you know. I see the same old Big Ben. The guy, he can still throw the ball down the field. He still throws the ball pretty quick. You know, he still can break a couple of tackles and, you know, get the ball away. Yeah, I see the same old Big Ben for sure.
Time for our third and final segment on this episode of Ready for Kickoff. Guys, the last week we saw Caden Stearns really come out of nowhere and have a big game. Javonte Williams had that big run. Who's somebody who needs to step up this week for the Broncos to win?
Well, Phil, I'm actually not going to pick just one player. I'm going to pick a position group as a whole. I think the offensive line really needs to step up. I mean, pass protection just wasn't great last week. You mentioned it earlier. They allowed 5 sacks. Garrett Bowles, like you mentioned, has already allowed 3 sacks so far this season. I mean, I know we were without 2 of our starters last week, obviously with Graham Glasgow and Dalton Reisner being injured. But you know, who's ever in at quarterback obviously needs to make quick decisions and, you know, get the ball down the field. But I think if, you know, our offensive line is able to hold off the Steelers' pass rush, I think we have a good chance of winning this game.
I think Garrett Bowles was pretty upset after the game last week. He said that he let his teammates down. Eric, who's your player to watch this week?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Cortland Sutton. You know, a few weeks ago, 9 catches, 159 yards. Last week, just 3 for 47 yards. He's got to be more of an impact player, especially with Jerry Jeudy out. You know, Noah Fant hasn't had kind of the game-to-game impact that maybe you would expect. Cortland Sutton views himself as a number 1 wide receiver. He's shown he can be that guy, former Pro Bowler, but he's got to do that on a week-in, week-out basis, and he agrees with that. I know he's somewhat limited because it depends on where the quarterback's throwing the ball. Do you have time to get it to him? But he wants to be the spoon that mixes in the chocolate into the milk, makes some chocolate milk. Let's see some chocolate milk in Pittsburgh this weekend. A big game for Cortland Sutton, hopefully.
That was a good line for Cortland Sutton. Yeah, you got to be that spoon. Yeah, he had some opportunities last week with the ball, just not in a spot for him to be able to catch it. Here's what he had to say about maybe trying to bounce back and make an impact this week.
I use the term being the spoon. You make some chocolate milk. You got regular milk. You put the chocolate joint in there. You got to have the spoon to stir it up. So, I always use that term of being the spoon. And, I do look at myself as a guy who wants to go out there and be the spoon, go out there and make a big play to get the offense going and get some juice going. And I know the rest of my guys in my room and the rest of the offensive guys, they all look at that. If there's a lull, everybody's like, let's get that one play to get us going, get that momentum rolling so that we can have the success that we want.
Time to wrap things up now here with our score predictions. Let's hear it, Sydney.
I'm going to go with the Broncos winning again. Obviously, of course, right? I'm going to go with 2017. I think it's going to be a close game.
2017.
2017.
Okay, maybe Brandon McManus, something late.
Yeah.
Eric?
Similar score, I think 20-16.
Oh my gosh, come on. This isn't The Price is Right or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, can't go over, but I think 20-16, I only feel good about this game if Teddy Bridgewater is able to come back, progress from concussion protocol, and be able to start. I mean, the Broncos looked like a different offense with him the first 3 weeks. And even I thought they were starting to get some things going in the first half. But if he's not out there, I don't feel great going against that defense.
Especially going on the road. Steady Teddy. He has a big impact there. Hopefully he'll be able to go. I say 23-13. Guys, I think Big Ben, he might make a couple of mistakes. At least he'll present the opportunity for this defense to have a couple of takeaways, Sydney, and I think maybe that gives the offensive side of the ball some short fields. 23-13, the Broncos bounce back, and 4-1 sounds much better than 3-2. A big difference.
That's a fact.
Yep.
It is a fact. It just sounds much better. So we'll see what happens coming up on Sunday. That's going to do it for us. For Eric DILALLA, Sydney Jones, I'm Phil Milani.